this morning, and then we'll make a cut to our top 8, work our way through the elimination rounds, and we'll be giving away to first place $5,000, 25 Open Series points, and an invite to our Season 3 Invitational in wonderful, beautiful, majestic New Jersey, which you paid me to say.
Yep.
Because none of those things are true. Right?
The empirically best place to live, the crucible of competitive magic. We'll be heading back there, I think twice this year. Go back for an Open Series Legacy event later in the year.
And Elvis Mystic is how we are going to start day 2 of competition here for Michael. Zaring with the Temple of Malady. A little scry action will be taking place. Top card will go to the bottom. We'll head back Gould's way. Part of the reason that Green Red Devotion was so popular at the Season 2 Invitational is because it had a great matchup against Abzan aggro.
Yes.
A Nykthos, a Sylvan Caryatid, another Elvish Mystic, and I expect a big turn next turn from Michael.
Well, Natahlia is just at the mercy of whatever Michael can produce next turn. Now, she does have some removal spells, 3 main deck copies of Hero's Downfall, 3 main deck copies of Abzan Charm, and a Murderous Cut. But she better have them right now if Michael has any of his big plays.
Shasha Death Dealer was the play there for Zaring. Gould's draw step was a copy of Genesis Hydra. So he's got that payoff card that he's looking for. It's unsure if he's going to cast it this turn or if he's going to wait. Looks like it'll be a Courser of Crufix this turn.
Yeah, the Genesis Hydra is the only payoff card in the hand. And Michael can basically set up for one turn here. Play Courser of Crufix, fortunately for him, finds a land on top of the deck. And next turn can produce a very large Genesis Hydra through Nykthos and all the green mana symbols he has in play.
Temple of Abandon will cost 2 triggers, one for Courser of Crufix, the other for a Scry trigger from the Temple. See if Michael wants to leave that Death Mist Raptor up top. Looks like the answer is yes, and we'll head back Zaring's way.
There's no immediate need for a Death Mist Raptor, but it's got to be better than the average draw step that Michael has against a deck like Abzan aggro, where Death Mist Raptor is just a very powerful attacker and blocker.
I think I'd rather have Death Mist Raptor than just a random draw.
Exactly. You saw some hesitation because it's not like Death Mist Raptor really does anything in an immediate sense, but Michael knows it's going to be good sooner or later in the game.
Zaring will sacrifice a Windswept Heath, search up a Plains. We'll see what the follow-up will be. Perhaps an Anafenza's on the way. It'll be a Courser of Crufix, so we'll see the top card of her deck in just a moment.
StarCityPairings.StarCityGames.com, and I've also been posted in paper. Please take a look and make your way to your seats.
And that's a copy of Dromoka's command. Pass the turn back over to Gould, who of course will be drawing that Death Mist Raptor. We'll see what the card underneath that is in just a second. It's a Hornet Queen. That's a doozy. That's a card that Abzan aggro has a heck of a time trying to beat.
So now we're going to count to see if we got 9 mana.
Yep.
Genesis Hydra for 7, getting a Hornet Queen. Pretty good turn here for Michael, if you can set it up.
Yeah, it looks like he's got access to 8 mana at this point. So if he has a land that enters the battlefield untapped that doesn't cause him to fetch or shuffle, likely good to go.
Yeah, I believe the lands he has in hand are Rugged Highlands and Wooded Foothills, which is a little unfortunate.
Wooded Foothills will cause a trigger from the Courser. We might have ourselves a Nykthos activation. You can also see it from Michael here, not in much of a rush as he's really under no pressure.
He doesn't have to do anything this turn if he doesn't want to. He can play the Death Mist Raptor. That's easy enough.
Looks like he's going to sacrifice the Wooded Foothills.
Legacy players, if your opponent has not seen the caution you, please raise your hand and give those last 2 people.
Look at a basic forest. Perhaps spin the Genesis Hydra wheel in just a moment.
I assume. I mean, giving up on the Hornet Queen next turn is a pretty big cost, so if Michael's sacrificing the Wooded Foothills here, I'm assuming it's because he just wants to generate a very large Genesis Hydra this turn.
And Nykthos will be adding 5, so it is certainly plus mana at this point. And with those Elvish Mystics and the Sylvan Caryatid, it would be for 7 if he uses all of his mana. Top card is a Temple of Abandon. And it looks like that's the route we're going. Not much of a surprise there. There is Genesis Hydra.
All right,
So we'll see the top 7 cards.
We will be playing 7 rounds of Swiss today.
And we'll find out just how good they are. Pelucranos and Xenagos appear to be the best of the bunch. Pelucranos isn't a bad constellation prize here.
Although, unlike Hornet Queen, if Natahlia has a removal spell for Pelucranos, not a lot of damage gets done.
Yep.
I mean, there's still a very large Genesis Hydra. Natahlia can block that for a little while with the Death Dealer. It still remains to be seen how she actually makes forward progress in the game, but this is not nearly as bad for her as the Hornet Queen coming off.
Yeah, Hornet Queen is basically impossible for Obzon aggro to beat.
Very close to unbeatable here. No copies of Bioblight in Natalia's list. It's pretty close to game over. So this is still really bad, but Natahlia has some hope of getting out of this. But that's all predicated on her answering Pelucranos right now, because otherwise her board gets wiped. And
Yep. Dromoka's Command is the draw. Windswept Heath is the top card of the deck. That'll enter play there. Windswept Heath will be sacrificed. See Sylvan Carry added on top here for Gould's side. We'll see what's on top for Zaring's side in just a moment as she does resolve for fetch line activation.
But the top card of Michael's deck there, a Carry added, is no help.
Nope.
And he's got no gas left in the tank. If Natahlia has an Obzon Charm here for Pelucranos, she is not beat just yet, as bad as this game has gone thus far. She can get to something like Wingmate Rock, especially.
Which is very, very hard for Green-Red Devotion to beat. We'll see if there's a removal spell here for these two big creatures. Zaring will have to reveal the top card of her deck as well because of the Courser of Crewfix. It's a Temple of Malady.
The problem, of course, if Natahlia does not have a removal spell is next turn is real bad.
To say the least. And it doesn't appear there's a removal spell. She's flipping back and forth between Dromoka's Command and Siege Rhino right now. And this is just a board where Siege Rhino is horribly outclassed.
Yeah, well, the only thing that Natahlia can really try to do here is set up Dromoka's Command plus Regeneration on Death Dealer and hope that Michael messes up.
Sure.
Which is a long shot, but casting the Siege Rhino that's a death sentence because her board's going to get wiped.
Well, here is the Siege Rhino. She's going to gain 3 life. Gould will lose 3 life, but this looks like it's going to wind up being a really, really good turn for Michael. Caryatid will be the draw here in just a moment, but the amount of mana that Michael can generate is fairly scary. Forest on top of the deck.
And if I'm in Michael's seat, the Siege Rhino is the lowest priority of those creatures to kill. One can generate some card advantage, one can regenerate, and the other one is just numbers. And Michael's got numbers covered on the board right now.
Numbers very, very easy.
Yeah.
He will take a moment here to decide exactly how he wants to move through with his turn. The back part of the deck can be pretty difficult as far as the Pelucranos activation is concerned, but he's got the ability to generate a boatload of mana, really start wiping the board and get in here for large attacks. We can't forget that there is a 7/7 Genesis Hydra out there too.
Yeah. That's part of the reason that I would want to get rid of the Death Dealer as one of the priorities here, is get the regenerating blocker out of the way.
Here's Monstrosity activation. Death Dealer and Courser are going to bite the dust. Rhino will be left over, but again, it is just horribly outclassed on this board. Here comes Pelucranos and the Genesis Hydra, it appears.
So this is not a lethal attack,
Certainly feels like it is.
but it's still really bad.
Yeah. And Gould's hand isn't great. I mean, Death Raptor is okay in his hand. The Ravaged Highlands, of course, doesn't matter all that much at this point. And the Curiad, doesn't matter too much either. But he's got what he needs on the board. He'll play the Forest off the top of his deck. That'll trigger Courser, of course. And take a look at the top card of that. It's a Temple of Abandon. That'll be the draw step next turn. So we'll head back Zaring's way. Temple of Malady, the draw. Don't get to see the next card because Courser's no longer on the battlefield. It's going to take one heck of a combination of cards to get out of this one.
Yeah, it almost has to be a removal spell to even continue to play. And even in that scenario, Natahlia is probably looking at a chump block next turn on one of the other large creatures.
Step one's Tasigur.
This is not the worst, as it allows Natahlia to still leave up Dromoka's command, but Michael's creatures are just so large at this point.
Gould will untap those large creatures and all that mana. Temple of Abandon is the draw. Forest on top of the deck. This will be in the draw step. We'll have some fighting. And I believe we might have Sacrifice and Enchantment. I know Courser's a little off the screen here at this point. But Elvish Mystic and Courser are going to bite the dust.
But this is still a double chump block scenario.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see both those big creatures get turned sideways here in a moment. And
Elvish Mystic can even get in there too.
It's a freebie. Yep.
Well, he's got Death Raptor in hand, so getting Natahlia to 4 is actually somewhat valuable, as it means Death Raptor and Elvish Mystic are also a lethal combination of attackers on top of your 2 large creatures.
There's a Temple. Top card going to go to the bottom. Michael already knew what that was. It was a Forest. Oh, we're going to morph the Raptor. Tricky, tricky.
He's got mana to spare.
That could be anything.
Yeah.
Zaring is going to pick up her 4 lands and move on to the next game. Michael Gould going to win game number 1 here this morning over Natahlia Zaring. Green Red Devotion up a game over Rob's on aggro. As we move on to the sideboards here, we get an idea of what Natahlia is working with. Again, this is a pretty difficult matchup for her. Hopefully some tools over there on the board.
She's definitely got some good sideboard cards for the matchup, which is good for her because game 1, I don't think she's bringing enough to the table to have a solid matchup here. 2 copies of Self-Inflicted Wound, 2 Sorum, Solemn Visitor, 2 Drowned Sorrow, a Virulent Plague, 2 copies of Ultimate Price, a Bioblight, a Wingmate Rock, another copy of Dromoka's Command, and 3 copies of Duress. Really good stuff going on here. I think that the Dromoka's Command, the Wingmate Rock, the Bioblight, the 2 copies of Ultimate Price, the 2 copies of Self-Inflicted Wound, and even the 2 copies of Sorin are all reasonable cards for her to bring in.
Other side of things here for Gould, already had a pretty positive matchup. He's got an Arc Lightning, a Hornet Nest, an Ugin the Spirit Dragon, 3 Nihilia's Disciple, 2 Nissa World Waker, another copy of Hornet Queen, to go along with 2 Plummets, 2 Arbor Colossus, a Xenagos the Reveler, and a Den Protector.
None of these cards are too exciting to me except bringing in the other copy of Hornet Queen, which is a very challenging card for Natahlia to beat. Once you get past that, the Hornet Nest is okay-ish. I think the Ugin and the Arbor Colossuses are okay options, but nothing really jumps out at me as being a great improvement for Michael in the matchup. Most of his work got done in game 1.
Doesn't need to change too much.
Right. His core strategy, his main deck is already so good for this matchup that he's going to be a little light on powerful cards in the sideboard, and that's not too surprising. Natahlia is the one playing catch-up, and not surprisingly, she's the one sideboarding in 7 or 8 good cards, while Michael is making some kind of cosmetic changes to what's ever going on with his deck.
Well, these players will shuffle up here for game number 2. We will talk very quickly about the Star City Games newsletter, your source for Magic the Gathering news. It's free to sign up, and it's got some sweet things going on.
Yeah, Cedric Phillips over here cultivates the content, so you get to see some highlights in terms of articles, both on the select and on the premium side. The SCG Open Match of the Week. You get exclusive deck lists and advice for some of the premium writers, and an exclusive Cardboard Crack comic. It is free to sign up, and you can head over to starcitygames.com/newsletter to get signed up right now.
We get ready here for game number 2. If you are just joining us this morning, of course, Cedric Phillips, Patrick Sullivan, Ken Crocker in the sideboard, along with the rest of the SCG Live crew. We are here in Indianapolis, Indiana. Join us on Twitter at SCG Live, hashtag SCGINDY. You can also tweet directly at myself at Cedric A. Phillips or at Patrick at Basic Mountain. Yesterday we had some fun talking about Magic Origins. We'll do a little bit more of that today as the new set is starting to roll out here.
Yeah, we're getting some of the really cool preview cards right now. A lot of the significant storyline characters, the flip planeswalkers. Cool stuff has already been coming down the pipeline.
It's got to be a better name than Flip Planeswalkers, right?
I don't know. Maybe there is. Maybe they've already said what it is. I don't know.
We gotta work on that. I kind of like Flip Walkers, but maybe we'll leave it to a punsmith to think of something unique, like Brian Braun-Duin or Luis Scott Vargas. Sure, they've got to have something in the holster. It's basically their job.
Yeah, I know. This is why we need the two of you in the community.
It's very
times
true.
Like this.
It's very, very true.
There's a new thing. We need a naming convention that's both accurate and witty. Can one of the two of you come through?
Because we can't.
Because this is not my skill set.
No. Those cards do look sweet. We'll be going over some of those today and some of the other cards too. We talked yesterday about the evergreen mechanics as well. Just a little shift in philosophy taking place in the set, but it looks like a really cool set.
No, I'm excited about it. One of my favorite Magic sets of all time is M10, and this is looking to be pretty similar in a lot of respects. And the planeswalkers, the flip planeswalkers, whatever you want to call them, they are flexing some pretty creative muscles design space-wise. So I'm excited for this set. It's going to be the most recent set during my one Grand Prix of the year, which will be standard. So I'm also staying on top of it for that purpose.
Very smart. Big tournament. Zaring going to take a mulligan. We'll see if Gould likes his opening hand. I did like the removal of Landwalk. I thought about that more yesterday as it was explained, and it actually kind of makes some sense.
Right. I think they want evasion keywords that are a little bit more, like I said, gradation, a little more off and on, like Menace, the keyword we showed yesterday.
Yeah.
Intimidate, Landwalk, they have a habit of just being, you feel more like this either works against my deck 100% of the time or 0% of the time.
It sounds like Intimidate's long gone too. They're removing that?
That was the impression I got from the article.
Okay.
I don't remember the language exactly. Maybe it's one of those things where it's not necessarily the keywords being retired. They're just going to use it way less frequently. But I think they want evasion keywords that have a bit more play to them on the other side of the table.
Every time I think of Intimidate, I think about that old Blade Tusk Boar.
Yes.
What a jerk.
Jerk.
Always hitting me for 3 or being completely terrible in the matchup. Yeah. Guess that does make perfect sense. Same with Landwalk abilities too.
Yeah, I mean, you've had a history of playing with some large land-walking creatures at common, and they either are horrendous or unbeatable.
Yeah.
Anurid Merc Diver was one such card that I played a lot with.
Old Murky? Is that an Odyssey block?
Onslaught.
Onslaught block.
Where it was either an F- or completely unbeatable, depending on who you're playing against.
I remember that for Sewer Dreg, I think, was kind of the same way back in Ravnica Block Limited. 5-mana 3/3 Swamp Walker. Had some flavor, though, in the sewer.
Although I saw some people say, well, why isn't Hexproof retired? Because that's not interactive. And I guess the answer is, do we want to protect the person who's trying to block with creatures, or do we want to protect the person who is trying to cast Terminate? Magic's been pretty hospitable to the person trying to cast Terminate for 20 years.
That's true.
Let's give a little love to the person who's trying to block.
A Temple of Silence is where things will begin here for Zaring. Top card to go to the bottom as we're underway here in game number 2. A Forest into an Elvish Mystic. A key start for this Devotion deck. Temple of Malady here for Zaring. Top card, we'll see where that goes.
Now, Zaring with Whip of Erebos in her hand, I think that were I in her position, that would have been the first card I would have removed from my deck. Michael just doesn't kill stuff unless he's killing all of your stuff with Pelucranos. I don't think the game's going to get... It's unlikely that the game gets to a spot where Natahlia's graveyard is filled with stuff because there's been a lot of trading and removal, and Whip of Erebos gets to do its thing.
A Forest, as what Gould does search up here. Keep in mind the red splash in this deck, relatively minor. Dragon Lord of Tarka, Xenagos the Reveler, a few sideboard cards, but nothing major going on. You're basically a mono green deck here. It'll be a morph.
Could be anything. Actually, in this list, it kind of could be anything.
Yeah, there are multiple morphs here. Death Mist Raptor, there are 2 copies of that. There are 4 copies of Radiclaw Mystic. And oftentimes you'll find 1 or 2 Den Protectors throughout the 75. There's 1 in the sideboard here for Gould. That's not good. That's a Drown in Sorrow. The morph was a copy of Rattleclaw Mystic. I think Michael Gould had a big turn lined up.
I was not sure if Drown Sorrow was going to come in. It's a lot better on the play than on the draw.
Yeah.
And it's a very hit or miss card against Green Devotion, and you just got to see one of the hits.
Fortunate draw there for Gould. He did not have land number 3. But he did draw to play the Courser of Krufix, Rattleclaw Mystic on top of the deck. Here's a Temple. The interesting thing here is you see Zaring's going to resolve the Scry. The Hero's Downfall in hand, do you save that for a larger threat like a Wishwood Elemental, or do you just kind of try to take out the Courser?
Well, Michael has mulliganed, and you just got the 2-for-1 in with the Drown Sorrow. If there's a land on top here, I'm killing this thing.
There's not. There's a Pelucranos. Here comes Courser. The follow-up is a Rattleclaw Mystic, and I think there's an Elvish Mystic joining too. Yep, so mana doesn't look to be much of a bottleneck anymore. So I suppose saving the Hero's Downfall for a real threat is a good idea. It's tough, though. There's Siege Rhino.
Yeah, I mean, after Michael has that turn, you kind of can't use a removal spell on any of those creatures, I feel like. They're all interchangeable. So at that point, you need to save it for a card that matters.
Whisperwood Elemental, the top card of the deck. Looks like there's also Whisperwood Elemental entering the battlefield. And now there will be 1 face down from Manifest. And Dragonlord Atarka on top of the deck. Well, Gould is a little ways away from that card.
Now, Natahlia with Dromoka's Command in hand, which is great on the setup. Part of the problem is that Michael now has a Whisperwood Elemental face down. So she'll have to go through the sequence again. But Dromoka's Command does allow her to kill Courser Krufix and Whisperwood Elemental right now if she wants it.
There are worse spots to be in.
The ideal scenario would be land number 5, Drown, and Dromoka's Command.
That would be great.
That's everything. She gets everything in that scenario, but I do not believe she has it.
So here is Dromoka's Command. So there'd be a fight there, a sacrifice, and enchantment there. It appears. Looks like she's going to fight the Manifest creature.
Okay.
Now the Rhino's going to come into the red zone. And pass the turn back. Dragonlord Atarka will be the draw. And of course, we do not get to see the top card of Gould's deck as Courser is no longer on the battlefield.
I'm interested why Natahlia would decide to not fight the Whisperwood Elemental.
So I think the thought process there is, if you say sacrifice an enchantment and fight the Wishwood Elemental, you sacrifice the Wishwood Elemental, the Courser dies, you get a Manifest from that, which is Dragonlord Atarka down, and then, I mean, you've solved like part of the problem.
Right. No, that makes sense.
But I think it's a tough situation either way.
Yeah.
You saw Pelucranos and a Manifest. The Manifest is a mystery at this point. We know Gould does have a copy of Dragonlord Atarka in hand.
Yeah, I suppose at that point it's simply a question of whether or not you want to force Michael to spend his entire turn unmorphing the Whispered Elemental you know about, or give him a free 2/2, but let him go about his business.
All right, Hero's Downfall in hand here for Zaring. I think Whisperwood Elemental is starting to run away with this game, so you might just be forced to kill that.
Well, the flip side is, if she takes care of Pelucranos, then she can just sit back and block with Siege Rhino for a little while. She has another one in hand, plus has a copy of Waymate Rock in hand and is just abandoned away. So you can imagine Natahlia just going, all right, play a second Siege Rhino next turn. Now I got the defenses shored up. And eventually I'll be able to cast this Waymate Rock rated and maybe win the game that way.
Sure.
I can also appreciate the instinct of just get the Whisperwood Elemental off the table, especially if you have a follow-up removal spell. Because then at that point, Michael has very little going on, and you can sort of take your time deploying your resources.
Polukranos is safe to attack on this board, that's for sure. 5 damage going to be dealt. What is this? Morph Courser, okay. Top card. Temple.
Magic players, as you finish your match,
Now we're not too far away from Dragon Lord's Heart.
Yeah, this is a huge burst for Michael this turn.
and then turn it in.
Caryatid is on top of the deck. That's going to get scratched to the bottom pretty quickly. We'll see what the top card is now.
There are multiple
I mean, he's going to 7 mana next turn. He's
Yep.
got 4 lands in play, and he has a Caryatid as a follow-up.
located in the corner over by the judging area.
Sometimes it really feels like Dragon Lord Tarka should cost 8.
Hawks have respectively
We just gets there so fast.
I don't know, the history of
looking at the correct
2-color 7 mana dragons in Constructed is not flush with success.
Fair enough. Here comes the Rhino. Gould going to go down to 9.
Is Dragon Lord Atarka excessive? Yeah, there's an argument. But I'd rather them shoot a little too high with some of the dragons than not high enough.
I mean, it's certainly priced to shine.
Yeah.
Seven mana 8/8 with text. No joke.
We played a lot of sets where the theme was dragons, and the most powerful card in the set was something that was really good at countering or killing dragons.
Sure.
I like doing it the other way.
Most powerful card was like a counter spell per
Yeah.
se.
Mana drain.
Yeah.
Something that's really good against Nicol Bolas.
Here is another Siege Rhino. And a passing of the turn. Wooded Foothills, the draw. Elvish Mystic on top of the deck. But 7 mana has been accomplished here. Gould going to play Wooded Foothills. Gain a life, go up to 7. Going to stay at 7, of course, because there's a Courser on the battlefield. We have Forest or a Mountain. Doesn't seem to matter too much at this point since it's already got 1 red source of mana.
Oh, there's a set. There's this really sweet new card type called Legends. They're like unique storyline characters you get to put. You can only have one in play.
Okay, I'm with you.
Cool. What's the most powerful card in the set that interacts with Legends? Caracas.
Yep.
All right, awesome.
That's, you get to keep casting your legend. What's the problem?
you just get to keep casting Savitri Scarsum or whatever.
Here is Dragon Lord Atarka taking care of a Siege Rhino. Polukranos will be coming in. The whole army might be coming in here. We'll see. It's just going to be that and Rattleclaw Mystic. An attack for 7, going to bring Zaring down to 6. And you can just really see how this matchup plays out a lot of the time. It's going to take a really, really good draw from Natahlia and her Abzan aggro deck to ever beat this deck.
Part of the problem, you just look at up and down this roster of creatures, Fleecemane, Lion, Rakshasa, Death Dealer, Anathens of the Foremost, Courser, Crewfix, even Siege Rhino. These are the kind of threats that Green Devotion just chews up because
Yeah.
they're a little slow, and this deck is so effective at locking up the ground very quickly that unless you have Wingmate Rock or just a lot of removal, you're not going to be able to muster much offense.
Abzan Charm takes care of Dragon Lord Atarka, as that is certainly a necessity, or this game ends immediately. What's even telling to me is just, I look at the numbers on the cards, it's just Siege Rhino's a 4/5 versus Polukranos, which is a 5/5.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on in this
Yeah.
matchup.
Fleecemane Lion, 3/3, Courser Crewfix,
2-4.
2/4. Just the numbers don't even line up particularly well for Abzan aggro. And Zaring trying to figure out if perhaps she can attack here, but that seems unlikely. There is one Murderous Cut floating in the deck list. Murderous Cut on Pelucranos would give her a chance.
And Natahlia's start was awesome here. I mean, she had a turn 3 Drown on the play against an opponent who went turn 1 Mystic, turn 2 Morph. Has drawn multiple Siege Rhinos. Abzan Charm, Hero's Downfall, Dramoka's Command. You can't ask for much more out of the draw here. But every significant card Michael plays demands a removal spell immediately, and while it's in play, Natahlia can't really attack or block. It's been the same story in both games.
Well, it's not a Murderous Cut, it's a copy of Tassiger. She'll have to take 1 to cast it. She's going to go down to 5. Pass the turn back, looking to play a little bit of defense. Pelucranos can't go too crazy on this board. No Nykthos hanging out. Carry out of the draw. Oh boy. Hornet Queen on top of the deck.
Yep. Another card that's almost incidental for Michael in terms of what he's trying to accomplish, but when it shows up, it's very hard for Natahlia to win.
Here comes Pelucranos. A double block looks to be taking place. There can be a monstrous activation for 3 here.
Ladies and gentlemen, there are 15 minutes remaining to sign up for today's Modern 5K Premier IQ. There is currently no line. Once again, there are 15 minutes remaining to sign up for today's Modern 5K Premier IQ.
So Pelucranos will get a little bit bigger. We'll get a little bit of fight action here on Tassiger. Yep, so both creatures will die. Pass that turn back. The interesting thing here is that if Zaring is able to find a card like Drown in Sorrow, it can really actually slow down Michael.
Yeah, she would have to wait for him to play the Hornet Queen.
Here's another Siege Rhino. It's 8-4. There are 2 Drown in Sorrows in the sideboard here.
Yeah, at this point, Natahlia's Drown in Sorrow is a live out. A very good chance she wins the game if she's able to find it here. But it's got to be now, basically.
Here's Queen Bee, 4 insects on the way.
I think she also has Self-Inflicted Wound in hand, so if she happens to top deck her second Self-Inflicted Wound, she just wins by burnout.
Yeah, so there are some backdoor outs here.
Yeah. What's interesting in this spot is if Natahlia attacks with the Siege Rhino, Michael is obligated to overblock, because if Natahlia has 1 removal spell, let's say, and you block with a single Death Touch creature, you die because of the way trample damage works. So Michael might feel compelled to block with a lot of stuff to make sure the Siege Rhino dies and Michael survives combat. And if Michael overblocks with too many flyers, then the Wingmate Rock that's in Natahlia's hand becomes a live threat.
So there are some roundabout ways to maybe try to steal this one.
I think the first order of business is just attack. Put the ball in Michael's court. There's a very good chance he just overblocks. The problem is he has a reasonably safe overblock of Sylvan Caryatid plus 2 or possibly 3 Hornets.
Yeah, the block that I had in my head was Caryatid plus Courser. It's also really, really safe. Because if a Hero's Downfall hits the Courser, you trample over for 1 point of damage. You get to kill the Caryatid.
Although you're not killing the Siege Rhino.
Yeah,
That's the problem. You might be stuck in the same block the next turn. Assuming that part of Michael's priority here is to kill the Siege Rhino. I mean, he could tender the same block you just suggested with 1 Hornet mixed in.
Sure.
And then he's really cushioned against trample damage in the event that Natahlia has a removal spell for 1 of the Hornets.
Well, you see the way that Michael has reached for his creatures. He certainly has some interest in blocking and making sure the trample damage does not occur.
Yeah, and I love this block from Michael because he identified the priority of the situation, which is just make sure 1 removal spell doesn't clobber you.
And you also get to kill the Rhino.
Exactly. Yep. I mean, if Natahlia does have one removal spell in that scenario, she does get to kill the queen and the Siege Rhino stays around. But Michael doesn't really care too much about that.
So there's a triple block. Corsair of Krufix, Hornet Queen, and Sylvan Caryatid. So she'll have to organize blockers and deal damage accordingly. She gets to kill one creature here.
And I think that she needs to kill the Corsair of Krufix, because at this point, one of her outs is drawing the other copy of Self-Inflicted Wound, and Michael going from 4 to 5 is a huge deal.
Corsair of Krufix does bite the dust.
Yeah, very, very sharp there from Natahlia.
There's a Mana Confluence. Here's Wingmate Rock that has been raided, so a token will be joining. And then Zaring will pass the turn back with some very minimal outs here in this situation, but they do exist.
Drown in Sorrow is an out paired with Self-Inflicted Wound.
Yep.
The second Self-Inflicted Wound is an out.
We know Genesis Hydra is the draw. And it can be a Hydra for 6 here if Michael wants to use all the mana.
I mean, this is a scary spot if you're Michael, because you know Natalia's got some outs.
Yeah, it's unlikely to find a card like and Hostilities in the Obs on aggro deck list. I don't think you have to worry about that, but given the cards that you've seen thus far, I wouldn't be feeling comfortable if I was Michael. I certainly feel like I'm in a winning position, but this game could slip away from me somehow.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Natalia's deck has some elements that suggest that a sweeper could be there.
Time to attack. We'll see with how many. Looks like just Hornet Queen and Insect. And by having to kind of diversify the attacks here to play a little offense, little defense, that gives more draw steps.
Yeah, it's possible the way this plays out is Natahlia gets an extra draw step out of all this.
Caryatid. Now perhaps the Hornet Nest. I'm just going to pass back. Big draws are available. I think it may have been a Hero's downfall. See a little bit of reorganizing the mana here. And that other Self-Inflicted Wound does just get the job done straight up, and Drown in Sorrow is a great draw too.
Now the big question here is, has Michael set himself up for a lethal attack, assuming Natahlia has nothing this turn?
It's Whip of Erebos. That can start like a little Siege Rhino party. Here's an attack, there's a trigger, gain a life. Blocking does have to take place here.
And now Self-Inflicted Wound is definitely out because she has a Siege Rhino in the graveyard. She gains a lot of life this turn, so it's unrealistic for Michael to crack back for lethal. She picks up 8 life this turn, 2 from the trigger, and then 6 from lifelink. Downfall is last card in hand.
And there are the blocks.
But given that Michael didn't play the Genesis Hydra last turn, he kind of has to play it this turn now, because otherwise it's going to take him far too long to kill Natahlia, given that she's got a Siege Rhino in the graveyard. And because she has 2 Siege Rhinos in the graveyard, and that represents lethal over the course of 2 turns, he's got to get something going now.
Temple abandoned the draw.
And this is potentially really bad news, because if Michael does not find a big play off of Genesis Hydra, Natalia's Hero's Downfall takes care of the Genesis Hydra. And his clock is pretty slow. I mean, Natalia's at 13 life. She gets to gain life periodically with the Siege Rhino she's bringing back. Michael just needs to dial this up for as much as possible and hope to win the game next turn, essentially.
Well, I'm not convinced Michael's getting a next turn.
No, there's no guarantee.
Yeah, I mean, he's at 4 right now. You just whip back a Siege Rhino, put him down to 1, and then cast Self-Inflicted Wound, and the game ends.
I believe last card is Downfall.
Okay.
I do not believe Natahlia currently has it rolled up. If it's Self-Inflicted Wound, yeah, there's nothing to be done.
Dragonlord Tarka.
All right, well, Now it's this turn. Now it's this turn.
Yep. Yeah, last card is Hero's Downfall. So Self-Inflicted Wound is a winning draw step.
Yep.
Yeah, and Michael's got to put the pedal to the metal here a little bit, I would think. I mean, you're playing against Abzan aggro. There's really no haste creatures. You know, obviously Whip is going to bring back something that does have haste, but Dragonlord Atarka kind of checks whatever that's going to be.
Yeah. Michael just goes block with Dragonlord Atarka and Genesis Hydra.
Yeah.
You know, the attack does not matter for very much.
But I do want to try to get this game over with if I'm Gould. No extra draw steps.
Yep.
Zaring gets one more. I suppose you can split it up like this a little bit because Dragonlord Atarka hits so hard. So does Genesis Hydra. But Hero's Downfall can kind of gum up the math a little bit too.
I don't know if that's true, though. Natahlia gains so much life getting back a Siege Rhino.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it's worth 7. If she were to go get back a Siege Rhino and downfall one of your big plays, then you're playing yet another turn.
Siege Rhino was the draw step. So if Zaring whips back a Siege Rhino and attacks, we're looking at +7 life, up to 17.
Michael's got that covered on the way
he's
back.
got that covered.
But if she drew a land, downfall plus whip back a Rhino would give her another turn, and then she has another Siege Rhino in the graveyard for lethal the following turn.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Natahlia can get out of this now. There's just too much going on here. But this game suddenly got kind of hairy here.
Here's Siege Rhino. Zaring going to go up to 13, Gould down to 1, pass the turn back.
Now, actually, Natahlia may be able to block out of this turn.
He blocked the Genesis Hydra, right?
Yeah. And so how much damage in the air here? We have 12 coming through in the air. So Michael needs to attack some amount on the ground. He gains 4 and blocks the Genesis Hydra, and I don't think there's 5 points of damage coming across through the other creatures on the ground.
I don't think so either.
I think Natahlia's going to get this one.
By actually casting the Rhino instead of whipping back a Rhino. Because by casting a Rhino, it actually just checks the Genesis Hydra for the turn.
The whole ground's locked up now,
Yeah.
effectively. There's no attack, and because Michael under-attacked last turn with that Hornet, he doesn't have 12 points of damage in the air. And again, lethal is waiting. That Siege Rhino's in the graveyard. That's going to kill him next turn.
Ooh, Variable's having a much more pronounced effect on this game than I thought it would.
Yeah. I mean, this is been a pretty weird spot here, but multiple Siege Rhinos have died. Gaining life has been really relevant to give Natahlia a bunch of extra draw steps.
Yeah, Michael has no choice but to attack with everything. There's an immediate block.
Immediate block. No question here what Natalia's plan was.
So 15 damage gets through, but Natahlia gains 4 life up to 17. 17 minus 15, of course, is 2.
There was the one turn that Michael held back on the Genesis Hydra, though that was justifiable because at the time he was worried about end hostilities. There's a couple turns where I think he attacked too conservatively just because he felt like he had the wiggle room to do that, and now we're going to game 3.
Well, we certainly are. Natalia Zaring is going to win game number 2 here over Michael Gould. Abzan Aggro and Green Eye Devotion are going to get ready for a third one here.
That was incredible.
I agree.
thought Natahlia was dead to rights a couple times in that game.
Well, that's why you don't concede. That's why you play every turn.
Yep.
Pretty incredible, actually. That is a surprising result.
That was...
I'm a little blown away by that. Jeez.
Really impressive. Involving the card that I pointed to initially as being the card I would have immediately cut were I had Natahlia's seat, the Whip of Erebos. Typically not good in a matchup where Michael's not really playing removal spells or trading very much, but Natahlia had a very odd game there, being able to chump block a bunch of Siege Rhinos, essentially burned Michael out from 20.
These players are going to shuffle up very quickly for game number 3, so we'll make this quick. If you haven't seen Ali Antrazi's token, you're about to see it right now from his Season 2 Invitational win. It is, of course, him as a 4/4 Flying Angel with his son, Aiden.
Congratulations to Leon Trazi, well-deserving champion with Tron. our first ever modern main event invitational. He'll be playing in the Players' Championship as a result. $10,000 richer, and of course, this awesome token.
So congratulations yet again to Ali Antrazi, our Season 2 Invitational Champion. Look forward to seeing him at the end of the year in Roanoke, Virginia at the Star City Game Center for our Players' Championship. Game number 3 now is what we're getting ready for here between Gould and Zaring. And as you can see the clock, there's not a lot of time left to do it. This matchup isn't the fastest. Both these decks do require a little bit of setup with temples and fetching and shuffling and all that stuff. So we might be on our way for a draw here. We'll see. But Zaring able to win a game in this matchup, and it really felt like she was dead to rights many times there in game number 2. Excuse me, pretty impressive.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. But that's why it's so important to actually sit down and do the math on a lot of these turns, because Michael made a variety of attacks over the course of that game that were, okay, this feels pretty safe, and I'm going to leave an extra creature back just in case. You sort of got that sense on a lot of his attacks where he left an additional creature back, erring very much on the side of caution, because his position felt so commanding that he could afford to play around cards he probably couldn't even imagine. Just, all right, maybe there's an extra random removal spell here hanging out, and I'll leave an extra creature back on defense. All of those attacks amounted to probably 2 extra turns over the course of that game that Natahlia got, and she was able to cobble together lethal through the Whip of Erebos, chump blocking, and getting back to these rhinos. So there's a lesson there in that game. Don't just assume that you have the game locked up and you can play extremely conservative in spots like that. You have to sit down and do the math, because Michael left himself a point short, and now we're going to game 3.
And that conservative play may have cost Michael this entire match.
Yep.
We'll see how things do break down. It's going to be a Forest and Elvish Mystic here to start things off with about 3 minutes left to go. Zaring will take a draw step. Temple of Silence is where she will begin. Looks like Hero's Downfall is going to stay on top. Gould will take a draw. Another Elvish Mystic. Nykthos in hand 2. Nykthos looks like it'll be land number 2. Here is Deathmatch Raptor number 1. Zaring with a Fleece main line. Sylvan Caryatid at the draw. Doesn't look like Michael has a payoff card yet. Here comes the Raptor. Maybe it's time for a Courser. Also has the option of playing Elvish Mystic and Caryatid. Gonna go with Courser. Take a look at the top card. It's a Forest. That'll trigger the Courser. Gain life up to 21. This will allow Gould to actually cast the Elvish Mystic too. And you see a Nykthos on top of the deck. That'll be the draw step for next turn as we head back Zaring's way. Courser Crufix the draw for her. There's a copy of Manic Influence. Here's Hero's Downfall. That'll take care of the Courser. This will allow Fleece main line to attack. Pass that turn back. Gould will draw his Nykthos. We saw that earlier.
But as you mentioned, no payoff card.
Doesn't look to be.
Just mana, a Raptor that you see in play, and I believe a Hornet Nest.
Yep. Caryatid, Nykthos. Those are the other cards in hand. Temple of Abandon 2. Temple of Abandon can help to find a payoff card. Here's an attack for 3. There's Hornet Nest. Here's Caryatid. There's Temple. Top card goes to the bottom. Gould's at the mercy of his draw step at this point. Has built some good defenses on the ground. That Hornet Nest is going to slow down Fleece main line, of course. Here's Courser. Top card's a Fleece main line. Sansep Citadel will gain Zaring a life. We'll see what Gould can find on top of the deck. Another Caryatid, not what the doctor ordered.
Still, things are not too bad for Michael at this spot. Natahlia's not in a position really to attack or block for right now, but he's got to find a payoff card soon.
Indeed. Last card in hand is just Nykthos. Pass the turn back over to Zaring. Fleece main line will be the draw. Temple of Plenty. 2 triggers, of course. 1 for Scry, 1 for Courser. Tasker is on top of the deck. See if that's going to stay or not. See about 30 seconds left here. Looks like Tasker will stay. Here's Anafenza. Pass the turn back over to Gould.
I'm not that excited by Tassiger in the spot because I think that Natahlia's removal spells are so powerful that that's all I'm really digging for.
Well, Gould drew a goodie. He's going to start by attacking with Death Mist Raptor. So we're going to trade. And now he gets to go to the skies with Hornet Queen. 4 insects will join.
Drown in Sorrow has become pretty potent.
Yes, seems relatively important. It's a Temple of Malady on top of the deck. And looks like Zaring will be turn at number 0. We will get confirmation on that. Step 1 is Temple of Malady. You get triggers, of course. Courser and Scry, Siege Rhino on top. Might be wise to keep that there, as it looks like it's just going to be about life at this point.
Michael's hitting for 6 a turn in the air, and the Siege Rhino pulls her above 12, so that amounts to 3 turns, which may be enough to cobble a draw together in the worst case scenario.
Yep. I think it is unlikely for Natahlia to be able to actually win the game.
Yeah, with Michael at 18, the only way that I could conceive of it even happening is basically drown in Sorrow. And I don't think it's in Natalia's hand, and it's not the draw step next turn.
There's a morph. Pass that turn back. It is turn number 1. Arbor Colossus the draw. Queen B, and the insects come in for 6.
So if Michael's turn 1, right now he's okay. He can win this game on turn 5 on the board, assuming Natahlia is doing nothing but casting a Siege Rhino.
Arbor Colossus will enter the battlefield. Unmorph a Den Protector. Looks like it's time to get back a Hero's Downfall.
Now, Hero's Downfall is bad news here for Michael, as the Siege Rhino, plus killing the 2/2 flyer, plus this point from the Courser crew fix, etc., etc.
It all adds up.
It all adds up. Maybe Natahlia can get a draw here.
Temple of Silence gains a life up to 7. Top card goes to the bottom. We'll see what the top card is now from Courser. It's a Hero's Downfall. Looks like it might be Rhino time. And it is. So this is all about just keeping head above water. Zaring will gain a little bit of life. Gould will lose some. I don't think there are any good attacks to be had here.
No, I think that she may be looking, is it worth taking a point of damage to cast a Fleecebane Lion? I think the answer is no, because she can easily chump block on the ground for the next 2 turns. But taking a point of damage makes the math with the Hornet she's getting hit with very, very sensitive. I think she's just got to say go. I don't think there's a lot to be gleaned by tapping this mana confluence here.
She's just going to pass the turn back. Turn 3. Temple of Abandon the draw here for Gould. So the eligible attackers he has on the battlefield now are the only ones he's going to have for the rest of the game. A card like a Xenagos Satyr token is not going to matter.
Again, Natahlia is not going to lose on the ground. It's just going to be to the Hornets.
In for 6. Looks like Zaring is going to fall down to 3. Hero's Downfall the draw. Top card of the deck is a Temple.
And I think 2 downfalls plus a land off the Courser should be enough for a draw.
Looks like there is enough black mana out there where mana confluence doesn't work its way into things. Top card going to go to the bottom. As long as she remembers that Courser trigger, and it looks like she has, up to 4.
All right, modern players, welcome.
Yeah, I think we're looking at a draw.
I think so.
Sitting across from you. You can please raise your hand. Keep your hand raised.
Pass the turn back. Downfalls at the ready. Gould will draw a card.
Or my friend Anthony comes and checks in with you.
This is the final turn of extra turns. That's a Temple of Abandon. I think he knows it too. Here come the Hornets. Arbor Colossus, that wants some.
Sure, why not?
Might as well. It's the last turn. 2 downfalls. That'll get you down to 1. I would block that Arbor Colossus. That is my tip of the day. And it's going to be a draw here between Natahlia Zaring and Michael Gould to start things off. After an impressive comeback in game number 2, a draw is actually kind of ideal. Truthfully, in this matchup, Abzan Aggro versus Green Red Devotion.
Natahlia worked hard for that draw.
Yeah.
Because